Liz, welcome back to the podcast and YouTube channel. And I'm really excited today. We're speaking with Elizabeth Surgeon from Opal. I hope I said that name right, by the way, as well.
Elizabeth Surgeon.
Good. Functional medicine practitioner, and amongst some, I'm sure, many other things as well. Helping people master their hormones, gut health, and optimizing energy, and a whole boatload of other things as well. So, Liz, before we get into our main bulk of our conversation today, do you want to go into a bit more detail, better than me anyway, of what you do and how you're helping people at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a functional health practitioner and women's health and performance coach. So I'm based here in the UK, but myself and my team, we work with women all over the world, really bringing them back into connection with their body, and particularly when it comes to their hormones and their energy. So we're really looking at supporting women throughout their life course, whether that's the regular cycling women, supporting them with their hormonal balance, or as they move through peri-menopause and beyond, and really allowing them to come into connection with their hormones. Quite a lot of women from a young age lose connection with our hormones. And as we progress through life, that can then show itself up in many different ways, whether it's hormonal imbalances, hormonal conditions, or as we reach peri-menopause, it kind of might hit us like a bit of a brick wall. So helping them to come back into connection, harmonize those hormones, and then really look at the energy piece, and that's really looking at the adrenals. So that's where we focus all of our love inside the Nourished Club, and the work that we do.
No, that's great, and I love your work anyway. And we've crossed paths through a friend that we know, and it's great when you come across someone who really gets to the core issues of an individual and really takes time over trying to figure out exactly what's going on. Because as we've been working with people for many years now, we understand that we can't just put something in place and hope it sticks, hope it works.
Yeah.
We need to really understand that person, where they're coming from, where they want to get to, their lifestyles, what they're going through, and really take the time. And I think really that's how you can only truly help someone, isn't it? Particularly long term, and not hope for this quick fix, which is something that I'm sure we're trying to move away from as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really what we do inside functional medicine. So I was a registered nutritionist originally, then I moved into the sort of functional health, functional medicine side of things. And in that side of things, we're always looking for the root cause or causes. There's very rarely one cause, it's usually several causes. And we work with someone with their entire health history, even potentially in some cases beyond birth, so even before they were conceived in some cases, to really understand their story that's got them to where they are now. And that is extremely unique for each individual. And then understanding, okay, what can we do to support you here and now with what you're experiencing, and then how can we move you forward? So for a lot of women, it might be in that moment, how can we get them feeling as good as possible, as quickly as possible? Because in that lift of symptoms, in that sudden creation of clarity or sudden creation of energy, it gives them the momentum and motivation to then continue that journey and continue kind of harmonizing hormones, looking after their adrenals, moving forward, depending on what it is that we're working on, going into a gut healing protocol, which for some can be quite complex, for some it might not be as deep as others. So it's about really meeting the women where they are. And actually, as we'll probably go into today, there are a lot of things that women can do before even having to go that deep. It's just starting to get into conversation with self, with body, and actually what our body is trying to tell us every single day. It's always communicating with us. We've just lost the ability to tune in and listen.
Yeah. I think one word that keeps coming up for me when we talk like this is that empowerment that comes with that. So now women have they're empowered, they have the knowledge, they have the tools to kind of implement this and feel more in control, to live their life with empowerment, with happiness, with confidence, all these different things. And everything you're saying, just, it's very empowering, isn't it? It gives them the power to regain control, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And just that feeling of knowing, knowing, anticipating, and being able to lead yourself. I think at a young age, we're disempowered and disconnected from our cycle, from our hormones, and then essentially from our bodies. And that just takes all of the power out of our hands, and all of the ability to kind of lead ourselves from a place of personal power, from a place of grounding. And what can happen is, and I was talking to some clients earlier today around this concept of we kind of always want to know what's going on, but actually our bodies are always fluctuating. They're always ebbing and flowing. And when we start appreciating that, and appreciating our bodies aren't meant to be in a steady state all of the time, we can start to learn to ebb and flow with them. Now, it shouldn't be a roller coaster. So this is where a lot of women come to me, where the ebbs and flows have become a roller coaster. And that's when it is disempowering. And that's when, you don't know, you're left from your right and you're just dumped. We get to flow, which is then it becomes exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into the main part of our conversation, I like to do this at the start of our podcast, is put out just 3 things that women, in this instance, women in particular, can implement into their daily, weekly routines that will support things such as their energy, concentration, and their feeling of, as you say, a feeling of a flow state. Things are running smooth, feeling like, this feels good. Is there anything, some quick wins, 3 quick wins that women can take away and start to implement?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd say the first win is around tracking. So if you're cycling at the moment, track the days of your cycle, track your energy, ebbs and flows as you move through your 28, 31 day cycle, however long your cycle is. Understand and track your mood, track your energy, track digestive symptoms, even look out for things, where do you get a cold, or do you sort of feel run down at different times in your cycle? Do you have more anxiety? Does your mood change? Do you have more self-doubt? Do you have more clarity and creativity at different times in your cycle? So start getting to know the nuances of you and your life and how you move through the month. And I know we're going to kind of dive into what that might look like and some of the details. But the first thing is just tracking, because as soon as you start tracking, you'll soon start seeing patterns. And for women who aren't cycling, so either you're perimenopause and your cycles are not necessarily as regular, or you're menopausal, or you're on some sort of hormonal therapy that means you don't cycle. Start tapping into your 24-hour cycle. And actually this applies to men as well. So any men listening can absolutely do this. We've all got cycles. So men and women have the circadian rhythm. Women also have our infradian rhythm, the 28-day cycle. So if you're not cycling, track the 24-hour. So how does your energy flow throughout those 24 hours? How does your mood flow? How does your hunger flow? How does digestion flow? All of these things, because the information tell you about exactly what is going on inside, and then how you need to respond. Now, you may need a little help interpreting how to respond, and we can get into a few of the top line pieces of that, but just start noticing, because you will start seeing patterns. Then you can get curious, and then you can make change. That's number 1.
That's great.
Number 2 is breakfast, where I see so many men just completely fall over before they've even started the day. So in the world today, Mr. Kettles came along and made breakfast something that's super convenient, that you just have on the go, and is generally just junk at the end of the day. And as women, we need to be setting up our hormonal balance first thing in the morning, because that sets the base beat for the rest of the day. So breakfast, it needs to be a good substantial meal. It can't be a bowl of cereal. Now, I used to be the cereal queen. I would be dreaming about my next bowl of cereal whilst having one, that day. I was like, oh, tomorrow I'm going to add this to it. I'm going to do this and all these different things. The challenge is when you focus on something like cereal or toast or jam or a breakfast bar, junk, basically, you are setting yourself up firstly on a blood sugar roller coaster for the rest of the day. You'll be crashing probably at like 10:30. You'll certainly be crashing in the afternoon. And then over time, when you're repleting that day on day out, that then starts to impact your 28-day rhythm, your 28-day hormones, your sex hormones. So breakfast needs to be fats and protein, predominantly made up of fats and protein, and potentially with a little bit of carbohydrate. That just depends on like your activity levels, what's going on with your adrenals. There's a few little nuances, but so the big thing is to tune in to what feels good for you. But fats and proteins is where you start the day.
I'm glad you said that, Liz, because I come across this daily working with clients, working in my workplace, and people are literally scraping themselves off the floor halfway through the morning because they've crashed. Those sugar levels have crashed. Insulin has done its thing, and they're reaching for the next quick thing. It's probably in a wrapper. It's got a load more sugar in it. It's a quick fix, and they go through the day on this roller coaster of physical energy, ups and downs, and mental ups and downs as well. And I think just getting that good quality food in with proteins and fats is just going to stabilize things and get you going into the day and feeling better.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite often, as you said, how you feel in the afternoon is what you've had for breakfast. So it really sets the tone for the day. Sure. And then number 3 is, where possible, get exposed to daylight as early as possible in the morning as you can, so soon after waking. So ideally within the first 2 hours, earlier the better. That's going to be so much more easier now as we're moving into summer. So just getting outside if you can, but if it's raining or you just don't feel like going outside, sit by a window for around 20 minutes, drink your cup of tea, do a bit of journaling, listen to a podcast, take that time, because that again sends signals to all sorts of different hormonal cascades in the body and sets up that circadian rhythm. So that's that's for men and women. That's really great.
I honestly do believe that is a game changer for a lot of people, is just that, particularly now where it's getting lighter earlier. I'm a 5 a.m. person, and it's just magical in the mornings as well. And if you can get outside and be there when the sun rises, it's just amazing. Particularly, as I said, as the weather starts to turn now, fingers crossed. And you just the rest of your day, you're in a flow state a lot better as well, and you're not as stressed. You're a lot clearer and focused. So those 3 are absolutely fantastic, and thank you for sharing those. And they really ring true with me and what we do with my own clients as well. The bulk of our conversation, what I want to do is really help people, and that word empowerment comes up again for me, is how we can help people to optimize their energy and exercise across their menstrual cycle. And I'm talking about people women who are driven with career. They've probably got families, they've got a lot going on, but their health means something to them. They want to be as healthy as possible. But throughout that cycle, they're probably not feeling great, then they're feeling okay. A lot of frustration can come with that. Why don't I feel like going to the gym or going for my walk or going for my swim? Why am I not performing as well as I feel I should be? And then why am I making these different decisions around food? This makes me feel bad because I feel like I shouldn't be eating this. So there's this very much disempowerment again. And I think it's worth a real big conversation. It's better coming from someone like yourself than from me, who may not. I know you said that guys have their own cycle as well, but I think coming from yourself is really going to ring true to a lot of people and give them a big insight, and also break down that kind of stigma that goes along with it, and really, again, empower people and give them some tools moving forwards.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Where to start? So,
well, I know. I'm sorry about that, because that is the challenge, isn't it?
Go. I think let's start with, I guess, one of the core reasons why I'm so passionate about hormones and energy is that our energy and our hormonal expression define who we are as individuals. It defines the way we're able to show up on a daily basis. It defines the relationships we have, the intimacy we have, the ability to be present in a conversation or a moment, our ability, just as you were describing, to be active in a workout scenario, the choices we make from a nutrition perspective, there's significant life choices, our confidence, our ambition to go for a job promotion, and our self-belief. And that all together is an important piece of obviously who we are and how we lead ourselves. Now, the challenge is we're in society led to believe that a lot of the monthly hormonal imbalances, so sort of PMS, so low mood, anxiety, heavy periods, painful periods, a lot of these symptoms are accepted as being normal. Lots of people have them, but they're not normal. They're just common. They are not biologically normal to have these symptoms. And I think just knowing that initially, because this is what can really influence us as we move through our cycle, a lot of these symptoms will come up in that second half of the cycle, potentially the week before our bleed, and to some women sort of during that menstrual phase, during that bleed. Firstly, knowing that those symptoms, we see you, and a lot of women experience this, but also know that as you start to tune into your body, as you start to make changes, whether it's dietary changes, lifestyle changes, honoring yourself with regards to your workout, so not going flat out doing the same workout day after day, honoring yourself when you need to pull back versus pushing, that's when you can start to see those symptoms that probably do hold you back, that may influence your confidence and self-belief. You see those lift really quickly, and that can be within one cycle. So first of all, I just want people to know that, because I think it's easy to talk about it, but when you're kind of in that, like, but I'm in so much pain, I'm doubled over, or my bleed is really heavy, or I just feel so low and anxious, we don't actually need to be experiencing that. So first of all, we can start to attune and make changes. The next thing,
I love that. Sorry, Liz. I love that, because I think, and coming from helping women and men for a long time, trying to, gain their health goals, their physical goals, whether that's to lose body fat, there's this kind of fixed mindset that everything has to stay the same, particularly when we're talking about exercise or nutrition. Everything's fixed. So if I go to the gym, it has to be for a certain period of time. And when I come out of the gym, I have to feel a certain way. And if I don't tick those boxes, then it's almost, for a lot of people, wasn't worth it. And you can't tick it off. You've wasted your time. If you didn't hit your calories and your macros exactly as you thought you were, then that's a wasted day. And I think it's so important that people need to hear this more often, that, like you said, there's going to be times when we need to back off, and there's going to be highs and lows, and that is a part of life, if anything. And we need to be aware of that and listen to our bodies more, like you said earlier, like being more in tune and being more awake of what our bodies are telling us at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we start understanding how our energy flows at different times of our cycle, how our body utilizes carbohydrate differently at different parts of our cycle, how muscle is built at different parts of our cycle, how our immune system and how our nervous system change at different parts of our cycle. Once we start tuning into that, you suddenly have all these aha moments, and I know we'll sort of discuss that in a bit more detail. It then becomes so much more intuitive and so crazy how we do expect and have been expecting ourselves to perform at a certain level, like a metronome, the same way every single day. And you just pause for a minute and it's like, oh my goodness, what have I been doing? In fact, it's counterproductive to continue to do the same thing day in, day out. It's not helpful, and we're just wasting our own time and actually not being very efficient in the way that we do our workouts and just lead ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that may, and I don't think it's completely this, but I think that may be coming from the external things that we're seeing a lot, particularly through social media, where we're seeing people do the things that we think we should be doing, you know, and it's coming back to that thing of, no, but we need to listen to what our bodies are telling us, and we need to go with that more, instead of having this outward facing vision of what everybody else is doing, and that having in turn having a negative effect on our mental well-being more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually in those sorts of circumstances, we're probably only seeing everybody else on their good days. So we're only seeing, say, on Instagram, you know, the influencers doing their workouts or whatever it is they're doing on their best days. We're not seeing them when they're curled up on the couch kind of having a snuggle, or the days they don't fancy doing the workout. You know, they're not doing that every single day, or if they are, there's probably on a quick route to going into a place where they don't need to be.
Yeah, 100%. So with that being said, Liz, how are we looking at this cycle these days? Is there, and I know we've got to be careful here, haven't we? Because everyone is different, coming from a different place at a different stage. But how can we move through this cycle and almost arm ourselves to be ready for what's coming up, and understand that in terms of nutritional changes, exercise changes? And it doesn't need to necessarily just be about training. It's about like spending time with your family, you know, and expecting these changes as they come through this cycle.
Yeah. So a good place to start is just maybe looking at the energy shifts throughout the cycle, because we can all kind of relate to that, and then start to map over some of the other pieces. And a really nice analogy that I really like to use around the phases of our cycle that kind of brings it to life are the 4 seasons. So if we start with our menstrual phase, so that's when we bleed. So day 1 of our cycle is the first day of our kind of heaviest bleed. If we have spotting in a few days before, that doesn't count. Day 1 is the full bleed, and that's usually around up to 5 days, 3 to 5 days. Now that's our winter phase. And with that, you can kind of imagine from an energy perspective, that's probably more of a time for reflection, evaluation, and looking forward to the cycle ahead. Then as we move out of winter, we come into spring, and this moves into our luteal phase. Technically speaking, our luteal phase is actually from day 1, but that's your menstrual first. So winter, then you move into spring, which we can call our luteal phase. And our luteal phase then takes us up to ovulation. So in our luteal phase, that's when we're potentially starting to feel slightly higher energy. The energy levels are rising. We might be getting more creative. And as we reach ovulation, which is our summer, we'll start to feel more outgoing, more sociable, maybe more flirtatious. It's when our energy levels are going to be at the highest, at the height of summer. And then we move into our autumn. So our autumn is actually the longest phase in our menstrual cycle, and that's our luteal phase. So that's after ovulation up until day 1, until our winter. And our autumn, the first half of autumn, is often with some of those summer type vibes, but actually often a summer vibe that feels kind of cool and collective, because our progesterone levels are at their highest at that particular point, and progesterone makes us feel calm. So we kind of have this energy and calmness and potentially confidence. And then as we move into the second half of this autumn, which is often when a lot of women will experience imbalances kind of raising their head, the second half is when we would be kind of tucking and tying loose ends, bringing projects to an end, really kind of getting ready to go kind of back into winter. So there's this lovely energetic flow. Now, like you say, it may vary for each person, and you may see slight differences in the nuances depending on what your hormonal balance is. So for some women, mid-cycle, depending if they've got something called estrogen dominance, so that's high levels of estrogen compared to progesterone, or high levels of circulating estrogen, they may find that peak basically in estrogen at that time in the month creates a kind of like a slight heightened anxiety. They may get sort of sore boobs for a period of time. There may be a peak at that point for some women. So when I'm describing you'll be high energy, they're like, I am not that. I'm actually kind of like, what's wrong sort of energy. So that, again, that is something to tune into. But generally we have that lovely flow. And then with that flow, we can then start getting kind of quite strategic with how we use that energy and how we lead ourselves through different times in the month. And a nice practical example, you were saying about how we might relate to family or bring it into workplaces. Quite often in the spring or summer, when we're feeling creative and outgoing and perhaps more sociable, we'll be like, let's have a party. I feel like getting all my friends together. Or you might be, I've got this amazing idea. I'm going to present it to my managers at work, the board, whoever it is. Okay. And you think through your party plans, you think through this idea, and you think, right, I'm going to do it and get all this in. Yep. 2 weeks time, I'm going to plan it. Well, then where are you going to be in 2 weeks time? 2 weeks time, you're going to be in your late autumn or in your winter phase, which is the time of the month where you're feeling your least sociable. It's the time when you just want to be really reflective and be thinking inwardly and trusting your intuition. And what happens is when it gets to that particular time, without this sort of level of awareness, oh, what's wrong with me? I just don't want to see these people. Oh, this is such an energy. Oh, why don't I want to see my friends? Or, oh, I don't think their board are going to like this idea. My managers, I don't think this actually idea is as good as I thought it was. This presentation is going to go really badly. Whereas if we'd been aware of what's going on in our cycle, we could have planned that meeting for 3 weeks time or 4 weeks time, which brings us back into our spring and summer, which is when we want to see our friends. We can host the best party with the best energy, or we can be presenting in our most energetic and inspiring space. So just initially, that sort of awareness can be really empowering, and how we can map that over our world and bring that even into relationships, how we spend time with partners and children and family. That in itself becomes quite a big shift in mindset.
Yeah, that's such a great way to look at it with the seasons. And I think it's particularly more important nowadays when we're all so driven to succeed, and we need to be achieving more, and everything is go, 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 isn't it? And that's not just, in the workplace, it's at home, we need to be doing something on the house, or we need, make sure we can get that holiday, and we need to treat the kids and do this and that. And we lose sight of this seasonal moving from month to month. And no wonder people just feel burnt out all of the time, because they are trying to present in the wrong places. They are trying to go for that promotion, or they're trying to place things at the wrong time, that they're just not going to get the support from their body and their mind that they need, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you start mapping over the top of that at different times in our cycle, our neurobiology changes. At different times in our cycle, our metabolism changes, our stress and resilience response change. The efficiency with which we can exercise changes, gut, connection with self, all of these things change. We can start getting quite clever. So if we take metabolism, that's a really good example. A lot of people, either if you're working out or if you've experienced dieting at some point, we think that we need to be doing the same thing every day, stick to the same diet, eat the same amount of calories, but we're just working against ourselves for half of our cycle. So the second of our half of our cycle, our cortisol levels are just slightly raised, so our stress hormones are slightly raised. We have a slight raise in temperature. So anyone who has tried to fall pregnant, you may have done temperature tracking. So your temperature rises after you ovulate. So that's one of the things you can look into when you're ovulating. And then it remains high during that second phase. And with this, we have a slight raise in calorific need. Right. So if you're dieting and you're trying to do the same level of calories, I mean, just talking about calories is a whole other conversation. It's not a very efficient way to diet. But anyway, if you're restricting, should I say, what you're eating and you're trying to maintain that all month round, you're working against yourself in the second phase of your cycle, because we do have a slight increase in calorific need. And in that, we might have a slight increase in carbohydrate need. Again, that varies on the person, but a lot of people do find that they are craving slightly more carbohydrates in that second half. Other things that change in that second half is that our dopamine levels drop slightly in the second half, and dopamine is responsible for motivation, productivity, all the things that potentially are driving us forward. And then we start losing some of that motivation, that self-doubt comes in, and all of these things can be then translated to so many different aspects of our, whether it's a workout, oh, I don't really want to go to the gym today, what's wrong, or it's like, oh, I'm really craving these foods, I just can't stick with this diet, all these things. And there's reasons for that, and we're just constantly working against ourselves rather than working in rhythm with ourselves.
Yeah, it's really cool. Let's just recap on that, if I can, Liz. So when it's that winter time is coming, that would be an absolute ideal time to back off any high energy output that you're trying to do at that point. Now, that might be in the gym, it might be going for a run, whatever it may be, but backing off of that, expecting an increase in calories, and particularly bringing in carbohydrates and things. And then
that's more the next bit. So
right,
the increase in carbohydrates is the second half. So that's the luteal phase. So your whole autumn, you'd give yourself a few days till after summer, but your autumn is when you experience the increase in calorie requirements.
And at that point, your energy and your willingness and want to do more, that would come up as well at that point. Yeah. Brilliant. And I think that's so nice, because then I think the word balance gets overused a lot of the time when we're talking about health. Like, very difficult to be balanced, I suppose, with so much going on and so many stresses, but that does lend its hat towards that, doesn't it? It really supports that notion of more balance, of give and take, come back a little bit, spend time with family a bit more, get out the office a little bit earlier if you can. I know that can be difficult for a lot of people, but get out of the office a bit more, perhaps plan a weekend away, chill out, if you can, and sit with that and be happy with that. I think that's the most important thing, and not have this frustration of, oh my goodness, why do I feel this way? Expect it. This is the time to recuperate, manage energy. So I think that in itself is so powerful.
Yeah, and the more you're able to do that during that phase, the quicker you're able to move into the spring and the uplift in the energy. If you're pushing really hard during that late autumn and winter phase, you potentially see you drag your energy into your spring. So you're kind of delaying that uplift, I think. And also from a workout perspective, if you sort of starts to get a lot more interesting. So rather than doing the same things day in, day out, you can actually put together a very simple but varied program throughout the month. So in your winter, that's an opportunity to do more mobility, potentially more stretching, slow flow yoga, balance, those sorts of activities. Balance, depending on how you're affected during the winter, you may be less balanced, but it's those sorts of activities that you can be doing. As you move into the spring, you can start increasing the intensity. Actually, that's a good time to do potentially more weightlifting. Add into there, protein utilization is kind of at its optimal at that particular point. As you move into your summer, that can be when you're doing kind of more, that's a good, like spring and summer is a good time to be competing in the early phase of your luteal cycle, so your autumn. As you go into summer, that could be when you do more steady state cardio. Be careful with plyometric type activities at that stage in your cycle, because of the heightened estrogen. You can be more prone to kind of tears and strains.
Yeah.
And then as you go into your luteal phase, you can do kind of like lower weights, more reps. You will have a slightly more need for carbohydrates at that particular point, so you can fuel yourself differently. And then as you come towards the end of that summer, of that autumn into the winter, again, that's when you maybe start setting goals for the next cycle and start coming back into doing mobility, yoga, Pilates, and some of those sorts of activities. So you've got such a varied month. Each phase is supporting the other, and each is progressive. And I think sometimes we feel progression is doing the same thing every day, but just getting maybe a little bit faster or getting a little bit stronger in that one type of activity. But actually, when we keep it varied, you know, we're just looking after the whole of us, and we're looking after the whole of our fitness.
Yeah, that's so great. That is. And I've had it a couple of occasions, or quite frequently actually, where I've told a client not to go to the gym, which is a really cool thing to be able to say, I find, because they're expecting you to be the one that goes, you need to go to the gym, you need to perform, you need to keep performing. It's so cool, and to see their reaction where, you know, you get that feedback, and you know they need to back off, and then, you know, the best thing for them at that time may be just to go for a walk with the dog, you know. And, just
come and do mobility, come and roll on a roller, you know, come and do some stretches and just be sociable. But you don't need to be here pounding it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with that is then they start to enjoy whatever training means to them, whatever that, like, whatever function of training that they are doing, they do enjoy that and adopt it more. There's more chance of them adopting it as a lifestyle and it being a part of their life forever than if it was just this thing that they had to perform at the highest level all of the time. They're just gonna burn out. They're just not going to be able to sustain that. So yeah, that's so great to hear. That is, Liz, and more people need to realize that and understand that. You know, again, we see it all the time with people in the spin classes. There's nothing wrong with spin, but I mean, if you do it for long enough, too frequently, at some point, you know, your body's going to tell you that this something needs to change. You know, it can't go on this way. So that's an energy output standpoint. What about, and again, we got to be careful, haven't we? Because everyone is different. But a nutritional, with the nutrition evolving throughout that cycle, is there kind of trends and things that you see? And how does that look on a nutritional standpoint?
Blending it with working out on that level, I think at this, if you're going like elite athletes, there'll be the nuances will be quite, there will be more nuances, as in, you know, how you might flex it. To keep it simple, generally from a workout perspective, the fueling from an energy perspective will be fairly consistent throughout the cycle. Now, you could, in the first half of your cycle, so in your spring, really, particularly if you're working out aligned with your cycle, you know, really kind of focus on protein and increase protein in that part of the cycle, because your utilization of protein to build muscles is, you know, slightly enhanced, or you know, better, more efficient is probably, I wouldn't say enhanced, efficient.
Sure.
And then in the second half, you may have a slightly higher calorific and carbohydrate requirement, but there is so much nuance in that, in the fact the type of activities that you are doing and at the level you're doing it. So for most kind of either recreational or amateur competing athletes, the nuance on getting too obsessed with that probably isn't isn't necessary. From supporting your body from a cycle perspective, there's a lot you can do with the types of food you eat at different times with regards to your hormonal expression and the symptoms you experience. There's a lot you can do with syncing the foods you eat with your cycle to support estrogen levels, to support detoxification, to support your gut, and all of the other changes inside your body. It wouldn't necessarily completely linked with exercise, but it will definitely link with lifting symptoms. There's eating like cruciferous vegetables, the brassicas, broccoli, cauliflower, sprouts, all of those vegetables, middle of your cycle and into luteal phase, will really support clearing that high estrogen out of your system. So really focusing on those, adding in phytoestrogens. So that's what you might get from edamame beans, from flax seeds, sesame seeds in the late part of your cycle, when the estrogen levels have dropped, when progesterone's dropping, where people might experience those symptoms. Adding in those kind of foods can really help lift energy and actually help with like night sweats or the drop in mood, etc. There's a lot of things you can add in from a nutritional perspective to support symptoms. So I could talk forever on those.
Well, that's the thing. It's almost a completely different conversation altogether, isn't it? And I think, but what you do say, is being in tune again, listening to your body is a big one, and getting most of, and you're never going to say all of your nutrition from quality single ingredient foods, because that's very, very difficult to do. But the majority of your nutrition coming from single ingredient foods, wide variety of proteins, fats, carbohydrates, fiber. Would you be someone that would like to push carbohydrate intake more around those energetic moments of the day or week? Or are you okay where people kind of put carbohydrates in?
So again, it depends on, I guess, on the intensity and how long you're training for. Also, it will depend on how fat adapted you are. So how efficient you are using fat as a fuel source.
Okay.
So I used to be a sports nutritionist before kind of moving into women's health. So a lot of my long endurance athletes, we'd get them fat adapted, and they saw big increases in their speeds and performance when you get a bit more fat adapted. I would recommend, depends again on the type of activity, whether you're doing weightlifting, I would try and set up your carbohydrates in and around some of those energy outputs. Support yourself going into a workout, depending on, again, what time of day it is, how intense the workout's going to be, how long it's going to be. If you're doing a steady state cardio that's over an hour, you definitely need to be fueling before you go in. You potentially don't need to, if it's an hour, you don't need to necessarily fuel during, but going into it. And then, just making sure you're kind of repleting those nutrients within a good amount of time after you've worked out. And then just listening, if you've been pushing yourself too much for a prolonged period of time, and you feel like you feel great doing the workout, but then you crash, an hour, 2 hours later, and you've just got blood sugar cravings for the rest of the day, well, that's your body telling you that, there's something wrong really with the adrenals. Your cortisol levels are out of whack, and that's then throwing out your insulin and your blood glucose. So tune into what feels good for you. And then the nuances will just depend on the types of workouts you're doing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The whole thing, the feel of the conversation has been really really empowering for me, because it's more of a case of really listening, being more intuitive, and just listening to your body, whether that's on an energy expenditure level, whether that's on a nutritional level, or just a life level. I think that's one thing I really want to get across here is, yes, we can talk about training. We can talk about how to manipulate your training and your nutrition to support you through your menstrual cycle and get the most out of that, but also about performing well in life, isn't it? And listening to your body and being in tune with it. So no, I really appreciate that. And I think throughout that conversation, I think a lot of people are going to take a lot from it, particularly those people that I talked about, like they're highly driven, they have families, they've got a lot going on, and they just want to regain that control. So Liz, thank you so much. I could talk to you about this stuff about, all day. We haven't even touched anything about gut health or anything like that. So, which is one of my big things that I really want to learn more about, and really intrigues me. So hopefully, if you don't mind, and I know you're very, very busy, we can have some more of these conversations as we go out through the year. I'd really, really appreciate that. And I'm sure the listeners and the watchers will appreciate it as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Fabulous. No, thank you for having me. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it. So I look forward to talking more. And if any of these little things were talked about, I share quite a lot to Instagram. So if anyone's listening and said, actually, I'd like to see how I can work out different times in my cycle, I'd like to know how I can eat at different times in my cycle, just look me up on Instagram, Nourished Club, and then DM me or just comment on something, say, you watch this or listen to this, can you point me to your posts on, and I can send you in the right direction.
That's nice. I will be connecting all information to this video and the podcast. You mentioned Instagram there. Is there anywhere else people can get hold of you, or is that the main place for people to get in contact?
Instagram or Facebook. So I use my personal Facebook page, Elizabeth Sargent, for all of this jazz. Instagram and Facebook's actually quite different content. So you join me in both places and then you'll get everything.
Tell me about it. Yeah. Liz, thank you so much. And as I said, I hope to be speaking with you again soon on another podcast.
Amazing. Thank you so much.